What defines a serial killer? Is it the lack of any sense of human decency, coupled with a sequential urge to do violence? Is it the uncontrollable need to spill blood without a cause? Or is it just madness? My name is Matt, and today we are taking a look at 5 of the most cruel, the most criminally insane serial killers across the United Kingdom. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button to never miss out on updates from us. Number 1. Peter William Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. Peter William Sutcliffe, also known as Peter William Coonan, was born on the 2nd of June 1946 in Bingley in the West Riding of Yorkshire, the United Kingdom. Peter was the child of a working-class family. One of the Sutcliffe siblings would later reveal that their father was an abusive alcoholic who routinely punished his children by beating them with a heavy belt strap. Always a loner, Peter left school at age 15 and entered the workforce. He worked in a packaging factory as a driver and as a traveling salesman, and in other menial jobs. In the 1960s, he even worked as a grave digger. This was a tiny but grisly preview of what was to come. Some accounts state that Peter, as a young adult, used the services of prostitutes, and that he may have been ripped off or robbed by a hooker at least once. This would explain something of his extreme rage against women of the sex worker class later on. Between the years of 1975 to 1980, Peter Sutcliffe murdered 13 women and attacked and severely injured 10 more. These women were mostly prostitutes, living and working in the north of England. This led to his nickname of the Yorkshire Ripper in the press, as the original Jack the Ripper also targeted prostitutes. Sutcliffe was finally arrested in Sheffield by South Yorkshire police for driving with false number plates of all things. He confessed to being the perpetrator of the prostitute murders, claiming that the voice of God had sent him on this mission of cleansing sinful women from the world. At his trial, Sutcliffe pleaded not guilty to murder on grounds of diminished responsibility, but he was convicted of murder on a majority verdict. It was only after his trial and conviction that Sutcliffe began using his mother's maiden name of Coonan. He was transferred from prison to Broadmoor Hospital in March 1984 after being diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. All his multiple life sentences were combined and his appeal was dismissed, meaning that he would serve a whole life order and never be released from custody. He died in a hospital from COVID-19 related complications in 2020. Sutcliffe showed a number of the signs of a masculine inferiority complex. The symptoms included sexual voyeurism of strangers, an unhealthy obsession with his mother, and hatred and fear of women. A diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia led to the legal decision that he was mentally incompetent to stand trial. 2 of the most high-profile media projects on Sutcliffe are the British television crime drama miniseries This Is Personal: The Hunt for the Yorkshire Ripper, released on ITV in the year 2000, and the Netflix docuseries in 4 parts called The Ripper, released in December of 2020, which gives an overview of the police investigation into the murders. Number 2. Dennis Nilsen, the Muswell Hill murderer. Dennis Andrew Nilsen was born on the 23rd of November, 1945, in Fraserburgh, Aberdeenshire. His parents had a very unhappy marriage. Nilsen later claimed that his beloved grandfather's unexpected death by drowning when he himself was just 6 years old, and the traumatic view of the corpse at the funeral, led to his psychopathological problems as an adult. His mother went on to remarry and have 4 more children, leaving Nilsen to become withdrawn and lonely. Aware of his hidden homosexuality, he had no sexual encounters as an adolescent due to his fear of humiliation. At age 16, he enlisted in the Army. He became a cook and served as a butcher in the Army Catering Corps. It was here that Nilsen learned the skills that served him so well during his 5-year killing spree. After leaving the Army in 1972, Nilsen went into police training, where he developed a huge fascination with autopsied bodies in the morgue. Despite this attraction to the dead, or maybe because he became paranoid about it, he resigned and went on to become a recruitment interviewer. Between 1978 and 1983, Nilsen is known to have killed a minimum of 12 men and boys, and to have attempted to kill at least 7 others. His initial confession in 1983 indicated that he killed about 16 victims, but because he couldn't remember names or faces specifically, the process of identifying the victims was challenging. The majority of Nilsen's victims were homeless or gay men. Others were heterosexual people he met in bars, on public transport, or outside his own home. All of Nilsen's murders were committed inside 2 North London addresses in Muswell Hill, where he resided during the years of his continuous and ruthless killing spree. One was a house on Melrose Avenue, the second an attic flat in Cranley Gardens. His victims were lured to these addresses through the offer of alcohol, food, money, and, most ironically, a safe space to stay. Nilsen usually gave his victims food and alcohol before he strangled them. He used a ligature to attack them, often causing instant death. If the victim had been only strangled into unconsciousness, Nilsen then drowned them in his bathtub, his sink, or a bucket of water. Afterwards, he bathed, clothed, and retained the bodies inside his home for several weeks or months before he dismembered them. Nilsen disposed of the bodies by putting them upon a bonfire. In his later confession to the police, he wrote that he would burn a car tire on top of the human remains to disguise the smell. Nilsen also removed their internal organs and disposed of them separately, burying them at Melrose Avenue and flushing the remains down the toilet at Cranley Gardens. It was exactly this mistake which led to his capture in the end. Nilsen's murders were first discovered by a plumber called Michael Catran, who came to fix the pipes in the building due to complaints made not only by other tenants of Cranley Gardens, but somehow, unbelievably, by Nilsen himself. We can only assume that he was upset that the toilet flush wasn't strong enough to dispose of human blood and organs. Catran discovered the drain was packed with a flesh-like substance and numerous small bones of unknown origin, and immediately reported his suspicions to his supervisor. Both men called the police the next day. Upon closer inspection, forensic investigators discovered further small bones and scraps of what looked like either human or animal flesh in the same pipe. When confronted with these facts, Nilsen pretended to be shocked and confused, saying, "Good grief, how awful." In response, a police officer present replied, "Don't mess about, where's the rest of the body?" Nilsen responded calmly, admitting that the remains of the bodies could be found in 2 plastic bags in a nearby wardrobe. Nilsen went on to say, "It's a long story. It goes back a long time. I'll tell you everything. I want to get it off my chest. Not here, at the police station." He was then arrested and cautioned on suspicion of murder before being taken to Hornsey Police Station. Nilsen admitted to engaging in masturbation as he viewed the nude bodies of several of his victims, and to have engaged in sexual acts with 6 of his victims' bodies, but always claimed that he had never penetrated any of his victims, as this would be disrespectful to their beauty. The bodies he didn't find beautiful, he just simply discarded under his floorboards. Nilsen was committed to stand trial at the Old Bailey on 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. He was given a sentence of life imprisonment and died in York Hospital from a pulmonary embolism and extensive hemorrhagic bleeding in 2018. There are conflicting views of Nilsen's psychopathology. These included a lack of emotional development and difficulty expressing any emotion but anger, or a borderline pseudonormal narcissistic personality disorder with occasional schizoid outbreaks. He was intellectually aware of his actions, but not of their nature. The prosecution's own psychiatrist, Paul Bowden, argued that Nilsen was instead a manipulative individual, capable of forming relationships, but who had willingly chosen to objectify people, and there could be no excuse for his actions. There are many compelling depictions of this murder case on television, media, and movies. Two of the most famous are the movie In the Cold Light of Day in 1989, starring Bob Flagg as Nilsen, which was awarded the UCCA Ventisita Award at the 1990 Venice Film Festival, and most recently, The Nilsen Files in 2022, a BBC 4-part series re-examining the Metropolitan Police investigation's many mistakes regarding the Nilsen murders. Number 3. Mary Ann Cotton, the Black Widow. Mary Ann Robson was born on October 31, 1832, at Low Morsley, County Durham, to a working-class family. Her father was a colliery sinker who was later killed in an accident in a coal mine shaft at the Merton Colliery Works. Afterwards, his widow and children were evicted from their home and suffered great financial hardship, even after Mary's mother remarried. As a child, Mary Ann was reportedly a most exemplary and regular attender, a girl of innocent disposition and average intelligence, and distinguished for her particularly clean and tidy appearance, according to her Wesleyan Sunday School superintendent at Merton. At 16, Mary Ann left home to become a nurse and later trained as a dressmaker. She left home at 20 after marrying William Mowbray, a timekeeper. The couple had 5 children. 5 years later, 4 of the children were dead. The couple moved around before finally settling in Sunderland. During this period, Mary gave birth to another 3 children. Not only did these children die, but so did William Mowbray. As a result of the deaths, Mary claimed £35 in insurance payments, a fairly large lump sum in the early 1800s. Later, while Mary was working as a nurse in Sunderland Infirmary, she met and married a patient named George Ward. Ward, an engineer from Sunderland, died 14 months after his wedding. After that, Mary Ann met and married James Robinson, a shipyard foreman. More deaths followed. 2 more of Robinson's children, Mary Ann's remaining child by her first husband, and Mary's mother all died in the early months of 1867. Despite these deaths, and with almost unbelievable faith in her, Robinson married Mary Ann. The couple had 2 more children, one of whom died before reaching its first birthday. The Robinson marriage was not a happy one. Mary Ann got the family into debt, which created conflict with her husband. At some point, it seems that she suggested her husband take out life insurance. Perhaps already suspicious, Robinson refused and Mary left him. In 1870, Mary met and married a Frederick Cotton by his sister Margaret. The marriage was bigamous and legally invalid since she was still married to Robinson. A week later, Mary Ann took out insurance on her husband and his 2 sons. The Cottons moved to West Auckland, where a similar pattern started to emerge. Just over a year after they were married, Frederick Cotton became ill and died. Mary already had a new lover, Joseph Nattrass, who moved in 3 months later. Mary still needed to work, however, and found employment as a nurse to a Mr. Quick Manning, an excise officer who was suffering from smallpox. It was not long before Mary became involved with Quick Manning, and sure enough, in the following weeks, her stepson, son, and Nattrass all died sudden and inexplicable deaths. Mary soon became pregnant with Quick Manning's child, but he refused to marry her. Mary was forced to take in lodgers and find extra work to make ends meet. In the summer of 1872, she was asked by the assistant overseer, Thomas Riley, whether she would be available to look after another smallpox patient. Mary said that this was not possible because she had to take care of her stepson, Charles. She asked Riley whether Charles could enter the workhouse without her, and when told that this was not possible, said something along the lines of, "Perhaps it won't matter, as I won't be troubled for long." Charles died a week later. Riley was so shocked by this convenient coincidence that he reported the matter to the local police. The initial request returned a verdict of death by natural causes, but the doctor ordered to carry out the post-mortem had decided to run some tests on the stomach and other organs. These tests revealed the presence of arsenic. Mary Ann was arrested, and some of the bodies of her previous victims were exhumed. Traces of arsenic were found in all of their stomachs. Mary Ann Cotton was charged with the murder of Charles Cotton, Joseph Nattrass, Frederick Cotton, and Robert Ronson Cotton, although she was eventually tried only for the murder of her stepson, Charles. Mary denied murder, but was found guilty on March 8, 1873, and sentenced to death. Having already given birth to her final child, a girl, in January, there was nothing to prevent the sentence from being carried out. Mary Ann Cotton was hanged on March 24, 1873, in Durham Prison. Although this case comes far ahead of the use of the insanity plea in the United Kingdom criminal justice system, some later research suggests that female serial killers often have a drive that's pretty distinct from their male counterparts. Many seem to act out their crimes in stealthier ways, often using poison and frequently killing for attention, sympathy, financial security, or some combination of the above. This description fits Mary Ann Cotton quite well. A modern diagnosis would indicate a lack of maternal bonding and high-functioning sociopathy, as well as a psychopathic personality disorder appearing in the mix. There have been multiple books, theater, TV, and movie portrayals of Mary Ann Cotton in the media. In 2015, ITV filmed a two-part television drama called Dark Angel, inspired by the book Mary Ann Cotton, Britain's First Female Serial Killer by David Wilson, a criminologist. Another very interesting and creepy contribution to popular culture regarding this case is the following nursery rhyme, which became popular after her execution by hanging. Mary Ann Cotton, she's dead and she's rotten, lying in bed with her eyes wide open. Sing, sing, oh what should I sing? Mary Ann Cotton, she's tied up with string. Where, up in the air, selling black puddings a penny a pair. Mary Ann Cotton, she's dead and forgotten, lying in bed with her bones all rotten. Sing, sing, what can I sing? Mary Ann Cotton, tied up with string. Now I do feel I have to warn you now, we at this channel do not advise viewers to sing this to their actual kids. Please use your discretion and curb your creepiness, my friends. Number 4. Amelia Dyer, the Ogress of Reading. Amelia Elizabeth Hobley was born in 1837 in Pile Marsh, Bristol. She was the daughter of a master shoemaker and had multiple siblings. At a young age, Amelia's childhood was interrupted by the mental illness of her mother, caused by typhus. Amelia witnessed her mother's violent fits of insanity since she herself was the primary caregiver until her mother's death. Researchers later observed that the effect this had on Dyer may have caused trauma, but also that it taught her how to fake mental illness. After her mother's death, Amelia eventually moved into lodgings in Trinity Street, Bristol, where she married George Thomas. After the marriage, Amelia trained as a nurse, a difficult but respectable job in Victorian times, which enabled her to acquire some useful skills. From her contact with a midwife, Ellen Dane, she learnt of an easier way to earn a living, by using her own home to provide lodgings for young women who had conceived outside of marriage, and then farming off the babies for adoption or allowing them to die of neglect and malnutrition. Ellen Dane herself was forced to flee to the U.S. shortly after meeting Amelia to escape the attention of the police authorities. Amelia was apparently keen to make money from baby farming, and alongside taking in expectant women, she would advertise to nurse and adopt a baby, in return for a substantial one-off payment and adequate clothing for the child. In her advertisements and meetings with clients, she assured them that she was respectable, married, and that she would provide a safe and loving home for the child. At some point in her baby farming career, Amelia started saving on the expense and inconvenience of slowly letting the children die through neglect and starvation. Soon after the receipt of each child, she quickly murdered them, thus allowing her to pocket most or all of the entire fee in a very short time span. Amelia was eventually caught in 1879, after a doctor became suspicious about the number of child deaths he had been called to certify in Dyer's care. However, instead of being convicted of murder or manslaughter, she was sentenced to 6 months hard labor for neglect. She claimed great mental and emotional trauma due to this nonsensical excuse of a punishment for child murder. Inevitably, she returned to baby farming and murder. Dyer realized the risk of involving doctors to issue death certificates and began disposing of the bodies herself. As another precaution, she and her family frequently relocated to different towns and cities to escape suspicion, to become anonymous, and to acquire new business. Over the years, Dyer used a succession of aliases to entrap desperate young mothers, take their money for childcare, and then kill the child and dispose of the body, usually in the River Thames. One of those bodies was found by a bargeman at the river near Reading. It was the body of a baby girl, later identified as Helena Fry. Local police made a crucial breakthrough. As well as finding a label from Temple Mead Station, Bristol, they used a microscopic analysis of the wrapping paper and deciphered a faintly legible name, Mrs. Thomas, and an address. Mrs. Thomas was a known alias of Amelia Dyer, who had prior record of such crimes and had been suspected by police for years since the sudden escape of her good friend, Ellen Danes, to America. This evidence wasn't enough for charges, but it justified police surveillance. The officers decided to use a young woman as a decoy. Dyer was expecting her new client, the decoy, to call, but instead she found detectives waiting on her doorstep. On April 3rd, Good Friday, police raided her home. They were apparently struck by the stench of human decomposition and plenty of other related evidence, including white edging tape used to strangle the babies, telegrams regarding adoption arrangements, pawn tickets for children's clothing, receipts for advertisements, and letters from mothers inquiring about the well-being of their children. The police calculated that in the previous few months alone, at least 20 children had been placed in the care of a Mrs. Thomas, now revealed to be Amelia Dyer. This rate of murder has led to some estimates that Mrs. Dyer may, over the course of decades, have killed over 400 babies and children, making her the most prolific murderess of all of world history. Amelia Dyer was arrested and charged with murder. Subsequently, the Thames was drained and 6 more bodies were discovered. Dyer's last victims. Each baby had been strangled with white tape, which, as she later told the police, was how you could tell it was one of mine. For the trial, Dyer appeared at the Old Bailey and pleaded guilty to 1 murder only. However, the details of her case were already well known, so she was basically convicted in the court of public opinion on the circumstantial evidence. Additionally, her own daughter had also given graphic evidence that ensured Dyer's conviction. Her insanity defense was thrown out on the grounds that she had a very manipulative but fully aware and intelligent personality, so she was responsible for her actions in the eyes of the law. It is said that it took the jury only 4.5 minutes to find her guilty. Dyer was executed by hanging in June 1896. Although her mental illness defense was clearly fake to avoid punishment, Amelia Dyer really did have a disturbing amount of personality disorder issues. The late 1800s were the period of infancy for modern psychiatry, but today she might be diagnosed with criminal psychopathy, leading to repeated infanticide, with a financial motive. She also exhibited some signs of narcissistic personality disorder and a distinct talent for impersonation, manipulation, and lying, arguing a love of performance but a complete lack of empathy. Amelia Dyer has not really been all that widely represented in popular media, but I do have 2 interesting facts for you about the aftermath of this case. Firstly, because of some overlap with the time frame of the 2 cases, a lot of people have wondered if Dyer could secretly also be the hidden hand behind the Jack the Ripper killings. Secondly, I've got another creepy nursery rhyme for you because, well, apparently, every time the people of Victorian England heard about a public execution, they always responded with children's poetry about it. Guess it was their generation's version of the club remix. Anyway, here is the nursery rhyme about Amelia Dyer. The old baby farmer, the wretched Miss Dyer, at the Old Bailey her wages is paid. In times long ago, we made a big fire and roasted so nicely that wicked old jade. And I think we can all agree that's got a certain satisfying ring to it. Number 5, Stephen Port, the Grindr killer. Okay, so this last one on the list is bringing it back down from history and completely into the horrors of the modern day. Stephen Port was born on February the 22nd, 1975, in Southend-on-Sea, Essex, England. From an early age, he was a loner who was often bullied at school. Former teachers have described Port's personality as quiet, while his neighbors described him as having a peculiar, childlike personality and exhibiting odd behavior as an adult man, such as playing with children's toys. Port came out as gay in his mid-20s. A former partner of his also described his personality as childish and gave that as the reason for ending their relationship. After leaving school at age 16, he went to art college, but it was too expensive for his parents, so he ended up training as a chef instead. Stephen lived with his parents until his early 30s, then lived alone in a flat in London, where he worked as a chef. He even briefly appeared on an episode of the 9th season of the television show Celebrity Master Chef. He was described as having an athletic appearance at the time of the murders due to regular visits to the gym. Stephen was bald and disguised this in public by wearing a blonde toupee. The hairpiece was professionally fastened and apparently increased his confidence when meeting other men. Part of his strategy was concealment, manipulation, and even identity theft. Stephen used a number of internet hookup sites and apps as a means of initially contacting his victims, including Sleepy Boy, Grindr, Hornet, Fit Lads, Badoo, Gaydar, Flirt, Daddy Hunt, Planet Romeo, Manhunt, Slave Boys, and Couchsurfing. He made up false identities and false claims about his background, including one in which he pretended to have graduated from Oxford University and served in the Royal Navy. And another, he gave his occupation as a special needs teacher. His drug of choice was gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, or GHB, which is commonly known as the date rape drug. Stephen added it to drinks given to his victim, them, and of them in his flat in Barking. Port murdered Anthony Whalegate, 23, a fashion student, Gabriel Kovari, 22, from Slovakia, Daniel Whitworth, 21, a chef, and Jack Taylor, 25, who worked in a bonded warehouse, all between June 2014 and September 2015. The 16-month-long campaign of terror that gripped Britain's LGBTQ+ community had long-lasting implications for police conduct during such cases. In the years that have elapsed, families and friends and loved ones of Port's victims have continuously criticized how the Metropolitan Police investigated their deaths. Later on in December of 2021, a searing inquest revealed that there were failures which cannot be overlooked when it came to police handling of the investigation. This is attributed to police prejudice and homophobia in protecting gay communities, where violent deaths go unreported due to the fear of stigma in any case. A BBC One documentary broadcast in March 2017 suggested a catalog of police failings and the Met's response to the deaths, including overlooking an obviously fake suicide note, implying that one victim had killed another, left by Stephen to cover his own tracks.
We completely accept that people's trust in us has been damaged by a number of recent events. What has happened in connection with the deaths of these 4 young men is part of that damage.
Back in 2015, Port was charged with 4 counts of murder and 4 of administering a poison. But at the Old Bailey in June 2016, prosecutors added 6 more counts of administering a poison, 7 charges of rape, and 4 of sexual assault. The judge sentenced Port to life imprisonment with a whole life order, meaning there will be no possibility or appeal for release. Port was incarcerated in HMP Belmarsh. In a harrowing copycat crime in 2019, Gerald Matovu, who is known to have supplied Port with the GHB used in those killings, was arrested and later convicted of the murder of actor and businessman Eric Michaels. He was then sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 31 years. Using similar methods to Port, Matovu had targeted Michaels on Grindr and had given him a fatal dose of GHB, which continues to be a popular drug for rapists and murderers as of today. Judging from Stephen Port's known history of social skills disorder as a child, coupled with an anxiety disorder, body consciousness, and increasing isolation as an adult, it's possible to detect the signs of psychopathic behavior and a borderline personality disorder emerging, where his visible insecurities were being compensated for by secret habits of deception and extreme violence. Due to the callousness of both the murderer and the police investigating the case, it sparked global interest. In 2017, the BBC aired the documentary How Police Missed the Grindr Killer, which went over the botched investigation into Port's murders. And in 2019, it was announced that the BBC would produce a drama thriller titled The Barking Murders, written by Neil McKay, which would be based on the investigation led by the families of Ports's victims. The series finally aired this year in January of 2022. So, what do you think about these insanely prolific and notorious killers from the UK? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and if you have any other famous serial killers from any country, including yours, that you would like to see featured on this channel, or any details or clues you think that we might have missed, let us know. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, folks, stay safe.